Welcome back to the Deep Dive. And today is Saturday, February 21st, 2026.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And I have to be honest with you. If you have been, glancing at your phone, checking the headlines, or just feeling that sort of low-level hum of anxiety that seems to be vibrating through the news cycle right now, you know exactly why we are here today.
Right. It's impossible to ignore at this point.
Yeah.
The world is effectively watching this high-stakes staring contest between Washington and Tehran. And frankly, the tension in the Persian Gulf isn't just simmering anymore. I mean, it is at a rolling boil.
It feels different this time, doesn't it? I mean, we've seen flare-ups before. We've seen words exchanged.
Sure.
But looking at the source material we pulled for today, and we have a massive stack to get through. We've got military inventories, satellite data, diplomatic cables, and some really detailed independent analysis. And looking at all of this doesn't look like posturing. This looks like preparation.
It really doesn't look like posturing. You know, we are looking at a moment that historians might look back on as a real pivot point.
Yeah.
We have a harsh ultimatum on the table. We have fleets moving that haven't moved in decades. And we have a level of military accumulation in the Middle East that we simply haven't seen for over 20 years.
Exactly. So the mission for this deep dive is pretty specific. We aren't just going to sit here and say, tensions are high.
Right, that's lazy.
Exactly, it's lazy. We are going to unpack the massive accumulation of military hardware in the region right now. We need to analyze the capabilities on both sides, what the U.S. is bringing to the party, and crucially, how Iran has rebuilt its arsenal since the events of last year.
And we have to explore the what-if scenarios.
Yes.
The source material you sent over, specifically the Barackface blog analysis and the 12-day war retrospectives, it paints a very specific, very detailed picture of what a conflict in 2026 actually looks like.
And it is not 2003 anymore.
Not even close. I mean, this isn't Desert Storm. This isn't the invasion of Iraq. We're talking about hypersonics, laser-guided rockets, satellite jamming, AI-driven drone swarms.
The tech has changed.
Completely. The technological landscape has completely changed the calculus of war here.
That's the hook for me. Because President Trump called this buildup an armada.
Right.
And when you hear that word, you think of, Spanish galleons or something historical. But the sheer scale of what is parking itself off the coast of Iran right now is mind-boggling.
It's a wall of steel. It is the largest concentration of naval firepower we've seen in a generation.
So let's get into it. We have a lot to get through today. Section 1, the surge. It's been happening since January, but it feels like it really accelerated this month, February 2026.
It absolutely has. And just to set the baseline for you, this is the largest U.S. air and naval presence in the Middle East since the invasion of Iraq in 2003.
That's huge.
That is not a small statement. That signifies a shift from monitoring the situation to active deterrence or potentially pre-positioning for combat.
Let's talk about the naval assets first, the big boys. Because the sources heavily emphasize the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group.
Right. The Lincoln has been in the Arabian Sea since January 26th. Now, I want to pause here because we often hear Carrier Strike Group or CSG on the news, and it just becomes white noise.
Right. It just sounds like a boat.
Exactly, but we need to understand what that actually represents physically.
So what is it?
It's a floating city of destruction. The USS Abraham Lincoln is a Nimitz-class carrier. It's nuclear-powered.
Which means what, practically speaking?
It means unlimited range. It means it can steam at 30-plus knots indefinitely without stopping for gas.
Wow.
And it generates enough electricity to power a small city, which is crucial because modern war is electric. You need power for radar, jamming, communications, and it's carrying about 90 aircraft.
90.
Yeah, we are talking F-35C Lightning IIs, Super Hornets, Growlers for electronic warfare. It is a self-contained air force that is larger than the entire air forces of most nations.
But the Lincoln isn't alone anymore. And this is the significant development from yesterday, February 20th.
Right. The USS Gerald R. Ford CSG has entered the Mediterranean.
The Ford. Now, this is the new class.
Right. This is the big leap forward. The Gerald R. Ford is the world's largest aircraft carrier. It was redeployed from the Atlantic, and it is steaming toward the region to create what military planners call a dual carrier posture.
Why two? I mean, is one not enough to scare everyone?
One is a message. Two is a threat. A dual carrier posture changes the math completely. It gives you the ability to sustain 24/7 operations.
Explain that 24/7 aspect. Why can't one carrier do that on its own?
Because flight decks are chaotic, pilots need rest, Planes need maintenance. With one carrier, you have what they call pulse operations.
Like a heartbeat.
Exactly. You launch a wave, they come back, you reset. There are gaps where the enemy can breathe. With two carriers, you can synchronize them. One carrier launches while the other resets.
Ah,
You can keep birds in the air constantly. You can launch over 100 sorties, that's individual combat flights, every single day. It allows you to overwhelm enemy air defenses simply by the sheer volume of targets you can put in the air.
and the Ford is technologically different, too. I remember reading in the reports about the catapults.
Yes, EMILS, the electromagnetic aircraft launch system.
Right.
Instead of using steam pistons to throw the plane off the deck like the older ships, it uses magnets. It's smoother. It puts less stress on the airframes, which means less maintenance.
So they can fly more often.
Exactly. It allows the Ford to launch planes faster than the Nimitz class. So you have a higher sortie generation rate. It is a massive force multiplier.
And the geography matters here, too. One is in the Arabian Sea, one is in the Med.
It's a pincer movement.
Right.
The Lincoln is to the south and east. The Ford is to the west, likely launching flights over Israel or Jordan.
Which means Iran has to look both ways.
Exactly. This forces Iran to split its air defense attention. They can't just point all their radars at the Persian Gulf anymore. They have to watch their western border, too. And when you force an enemy to look everywhere, they end up seeing nowhere.
And these carriers, they have escorts.
Ah.
I saw names in the inventory list like the USS Frankie Peterson Jr. and the USS Spruance.
Correct. These are Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. And crucially, they're equipped with Tomahawk cruise missiles.
The Tomahawk. We've known that name since, what, the 90s?
It's the absolute workhorse. These ships can rain down precision missiles from hundreds of miles away. They can hit command centers, radar sites, missile storage, all without risking a single pilot.
They clear the path.
They clear the path for the planes.
Okay, so that is the water. Let's look at the sky. Because it's not just the planes on the boats, right? The source material mentions a massive relocation of land-based jets.
A huge relocation. We've seen F-15E Strike Eagles moving from RAF Lakenheath in the UK all the way down to the Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan.
And Jordan is strategically very important here.
Vital. It gives you a straight shot into the theater. But the F-15E itself is important because it is a bomb truck.
A bomb truck.
Yeah, it can carry a massive amount of ordnance. Once the skies are clear, the F-15s come in and do the really heavy lifting on the ground targets.
But to clear the skies, you need something else first.
You need the Raptors, the F-22s.
Which the source says have been deployed to the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia.
Right. The F-22 is the premier air-to-air fighter in the world. It is basically invisible to radar. Its job is to go in first, kick down the door, and kill any Iranian aircraft that try to take off.
It ensures air dominance.
Total air dominance.
And then we also have F-35As moving to Jordan and Qatar.
Yes. So when you add the land-based jets to the carrier-based jets, the U.S. potentially has over 200 combat aircraft in theater right now, ready for operations.
That is an overwhelming amount of firepower.
It is staggering.
But I noticed in the notes it mentions ground forces, too. It is not just Top Gun stuff in the sky. We aren't invading, are we?
No, this isn't an invasion force like 2003, but there has been a deployment of an additional 5,000 troops.
Okay.
This includes Marines, but critically it includes air defense specialists. They are joining the 40,000 U.S. troops that were already stationed in the region.
And they are bringing hardware with them.
More Thalide and Patriot batteries.
Let's define those acronyms for everyone.
Yeah.
SALIDD.
Terminal High Altitude Area Defense.
That is a mouthful.
It is. Think of it as the goalkeeper. The Patriot system protects a specific point, like a single base. The eye protects a whole region.
How does it work?
It intercepts ballistic missiles when they are coming down in the terminal phase of their flight high up in the atmosphere.
So these are purely defensive systems.
Strictly defensive. They're there because military planners know that if this kicks off, the very first thing Iran will do is fire back at the bases hosting these U.S. troops. These batteries are the shield.
Which brings us neatly to Section 2, the adversary. Because we have to talk about Iran's arsenal. They aren't exactly sitting there with slingshots.
Far from it. Iran runs one of the most sophisticated missile programs in the world. But we have to contextualize this. Iran is currently in a recovery phase.
A recovery from what?
From the 12-day war back in June 2025. We will get into the deep details of that war later because it's crucial context. But the short version is that Iran took a severe beating. Operation Rising Lion, which was the Israeli preemptive stroke, and the battles that followed, cost Iran a significant portion of its missile inventory.
So what are they actually working with right now? in February 2026?
Intelligence estimates from the sources suggest their operational missile stockpile is somewhere around 1,000 to 1,200 missiles.
Is that a lot? I mean, 1,000 missiles sounds like a lot.
It's dangerous, absolutely, but it is down from a pre-war estimate of about 3,000.
Oh, wow. So they lost over half.
Yes, they are significantly diminished. They are leaner. However, they are ramping up production aggressively right now. They are churning out about 100 missiles a month with the aim to get back to 5,000 by 2027.
But the missiles they do have left, the quality has changed, hasn't it? I'm reading a lot in the sources about a solid fuel shift.
Yes.
And this seems like a highly technical detail, but the analysts treat it like a massive deal. What does that actually mean for you and me?
This is the core threat. It is simple chemistry that completely dictates military tactics. Older missiles used liquid fuel.
Okay, liquid fuel, like gas in a car.
Much more volatile than that. Highly corrosive oxidizers and fuels. The problem with liquid fuel is you cannot leave it sitting in the missile tank.
Right, not.
It eats through the metal, so you have to store the missile completely empty. When you want to fire it, you have to bring out fuel trucks, oxidizer trucks, pumps, hoses. It is a whole circus.
And that takes a lot of time.
It takes hours. And while you are doing that, you are standing out in the open. A satellite passes overhead, sees the heat signature, sees the trucks. A drone sees you. You are a sitting duck.
So liquid fuel essentially means, here I am, please bomb me.
In modern warfare, yes. Solid fuel is completely different. Think of it like a giant bottle rocket or the solid rocket boosters on the old space shuttle.
All right.
The fuel and the oxidizer are mixed together into a rubbery solid block that is cast right into the missile tube itself. It's stable. It can just sit there for years.
So it is just ready to go.
Always. This allows for what military strategists call shoot and scoot tactics. You have the missile on a truck. You drive out of a tunnel, you elevate the boom, you press a button, it launches.
And
You lower the boom and drive right back into the tunnel.
how long does that entire process take?
Minutes. 5 minutes? Maybe less.
Wow.
By the time the U.S. satellites detect the launch plume, the fire from the rocket and calculate where it came from, the truck is already gone. It makes hunting these launchers incredibly difficult.
That really is a game changer. And the specific systems they are using, I'm seeing names in the inventory like the Fattah 313 and the Zulfiqar.
Those are the solid fuel workhorses, but the really scary one is the Sigil.
The Sagil. Tell me about that.
The Sigil is a beast. It's a 2-stage solid fuel missile. It has a range of 2,000 to 2,500 kilometers.
So that hits Israel easily.
That hits Israel, that hits U.S. bases in Qatar, that hits parts of southeastern Europe, and it travels incredibly fast. We are talking Mach 12 to 14.
Mach 14. That is 14 times the speed of sound.
Roughly 4.7 kilometers per second.
That is just mind-bending. How do you even stop something moving that fast?
With great difficulty. It is literally a bullet hitting a bullet. And then you also have the Kibar Shikin, which is a precision missile they used in the 2024 and 2025 attacks. And the EMAD.
Now, the EMAD, the source notes that it features a MAR-V. I love all these acronyms. Can you unpack MAR-V for us?
Sure, maneuverable re-entry vehicle. Okay, so a traditional ballistic missile like the V-2 from World War II or a Scud goes up and comes down in a very predictable arc.
Like a thrown baseball.
Exactly. If you know the speed and the angle, a computer can predict exactly where it will be in 2 minutes. That makes it relatively easy to intercept.
Because the interceptor just goes to where the missile's going to be.
Exactly. It meets it there. A MAR-V changes those rules completely. It has little fins or thrusters on the warhead itself. As it comes screaming back into the atmosphere, it can change its course, it can zigzag, it can pull a high-G turn.
So the interceptor goes to where it's supposed to be, and the missile just isn't there anymore.
Correct. It breaks the math of interception. It forces the defense systems like the Patriot or the Arrow to recalculate constantly, and sometimes they just can't turn fast enough to catch it.
And that leads us to the really scary buzzword of the year. Hypersonics. The Fattah 1 and the Fattah 2.
This is the hypersonic question that all the analysts are debating. Iran unveiled the Fattah 1 back in June 2023 and the Fattah 2 in November 2023.
What makes them so special compared to the Mars?
Well, the Fattah 1 claims a terminal speed of Mach 13 to 15, and it has a movable nozzle that allows it to change trajectory while it's still outside the atmosphere. The Fattah 2 is even more advanced. It features a hypersonic glide vehicle, or
Yeah.
HTV.
So are these true hypersonics? Because I know from reading the sources, there is some debate there in the Western defense community.
There is a massive debate. Western analysts are very skeptical about whether these missiles can actually sustain hypersonic flight, meaning flying above Mach 5 while
Yeah.
maneuvering inside the atmosphere for a long duration, or if they just hit those extreme speeds in the final dive. But practically speaking, it might not actually matter.
Why not? I
Yep.
mean, dead is dead, right?
Exactly. If it is coming at you at Mach 15 and it can change direction, the flight time from launch to Tel Aviv is about 400 seconds.
400 seconds.
That is less than 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. If you are sitting in Tel Aviv and the siren goes off, you don't have time to make a cup of coffee. You barely have time to grab your kids.
That's terrifying.
It gives the defense systems almost zero reaction time. The Iranians claim these missiles can penetrate all defense shields, including the Iron Dome and the Arrow systems.
And where are they hiding all these things? You mentioned they are hard to hit on the ground, but you also mentioned missile cities.
Yes, they have learned from the past. They have dispersed these assets deep into the Zagros Mountains. We are talking about deep, concrete, fortified underground facilities.
It sounds like Bond villain stuff.
It really does sound like it. They call them missile cities because they are vast interconnected tunnel networks. They can store, prep, and move these launchers entirely underground. They have dormitories, command centers, fuel depots, all under hundreds of feet of solid rock. They can move assets from one mountain to another without ever seeing the sun.
So we have a massive U.S. armada facing off against a rebuilt, solid-fueled, deeply entrenched Iranian missile force. But to really understand why the tension is so incredibly high right now, we have to look back at what happened just last year.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to Section 3, the ghost of June 2025, the 12-day war.
You really cannot understand February 2026 without understanding June 2025. It is the context for everything we are seeing today. The psychological scars of that short conflict are driving the decisions on both sides today.
So take us back. What actually kicked it off?
It started with Operation Rising Lion. On June 13th, 2025, Israel launched a massive preemptive strike. They had intelligence that Iran was nearing a nuclear breakout.
Right.
So they targeted the nuclear sites at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan.
And it was successful.
Strategically, yes. It was a massive humiliation for Iran. Israeli jets were flying uncontested over Tehran. They proved they could penetrate Iranian airspace basically at will. They degraded the air defense network significantly.
And Iran fired back, obviously.
They did. That was Operation True Promise III. They launched over 500 missiles and 1,000 drones in a massive wave.
That sounds completely overwhelming. 1,500 projectiles.
It was intended to be. It was a classic saturation attack. The goal was to just overwhelm the Iron Dome by sheer numbers. But here is the key takeaway from the sources, and this is what haunts Iranian planners today. The interception rate was 90%.
90%. That's incredible.
Yes. Between Israeli defenses, U.S. support, and regional partners, they swatted almost everything out of the sky.
Wow.
About 31 Israelis died, which is tragic, of course, but compared to over 1,000 Iranian deaths from the initial strikes, the exchange ratio was completely lopsided.
It really exposed the limits of those saturation attacks.
Exactly. Iran threw the kitchen sink at them, and the shield held. It showed that just firing more missiles isn't enough against advanced AI-driven air defense. You need better missiles, which is exactly why they are pivoting to the hypersonics and MARVs we just discussed.
But the U.S. got directly involved too, right? It wasn't just Israel?
That is the part people tend to forget, but it is the most important part for today's standoff. Operation Midnight Hammer, June 22, 2025.
Midnight Hammer. It sounds like a heavy metal band.
It was a very heavy metal operation. The U.S. deployed B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, and for the first time in combat history, they dropped the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, the MOP.
It is the famous bunker buster.
The ultimate bunker buster. This isn't just a bomb. It weighs 30,000 pounds.
30,000 pounds.
To give you a sense of scale, a standard JDAM smart bomb, the kind you usually see under the wing of an F-16, is 2,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
The MOP is 15 times heavier. It's essentially a giant artillery barrel filled with high explosives. It is designed specifically to smash through mountains. It can penetrate 60 feet of reinforced concrete or 200 feet of earth before it explodes.
So it goes in, digs deep, and then detonates.
Precisely. They targeted the hardened nuclear sites, specifically Fordo, which is built deep inside a mountain.
And did it work?
It proved the U.S. has the ability to destroy deep underground facilities. The goal wasn't just to blow up the entrance doors, it was to collapse the mountain onto the facility itself. The seismic shock alone shatters all those delicate centrifuges.
That sends a very clear message.
It was a message. It said, there is nowhere deep enough for you to hide. The war ended in a ceasefire shortly after that, but that trauma, the humiliation, the destruction of the nuclear sites is what drove Iran to accelerate its rebuilding efforts immediately after.
So they've been furiously rebuilding for the last 8 months.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to today. They are trying to get back to a level of deterrence, and the U.S. is parking an armada on their doorstep to say, don't even think about trying round two.
But war is really expensive. And that is something the source material highlighted in a really fascinating way. Which brings us to Section 4, the economics of modern warfare.
This is fascinating stuff. It is the asymmetric tactics calculation. It's not just about who has the bigger gun anymore. It is about who has the deeper pockets.
The sources called it the drone swarm versus the bank account.
Right. Think about the math for a second. An Iranian Shahed 136 drone, the kind they use for these suicide missions, the kind we see used heavily in Ukraine, costs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 to make.
Okay, so 20 grand. That's the price of a decent used car.
Right. Now think about the missile you use to shoot it down. An AIM-120 AMRAAM air-to-air missile costs over $1 million.
Ouch. So if they launch 100 drones, that costs them maybe $2 million. If we shoot them all down with AMRAAMs.
It costs you $100 million. It is financially unsustainable. You literally go broke winning the battle. The attacker can sustain this forever. The defender runs out of money and missiles very quickly.
So what is the solution?
Yeah.
Because the sources mentioned something called diesel fuel efficiency.
This is the U.S. adaptation to that exact math problem. They realized they needed cheaper ways to kill cheap drones, so they started using APKWS rockets.
BKWS.
Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. It's a brilliant bit of military recycling. They took standard, dumb Hydra 70 rockets, which have been around since the Vietnam War, and they screwed a laser guidance kit onto the front of them.
Oh, that's smart.
Now you have a highly accurate laser-guided rocket that costs about $20,000 per shot.
So a $20,000 rocket to kill a $20,000 drone, that is a fair trade.
Exactly. And the F-15Es can carry a pod called the LAU-131 that holds huge numbers of them. They call it diesel fuel efficiency because the main cost of the mission just becomes the jet fuel to keep the plane in the air. The weapon cost becomes negligible.
I also saw mentions in the notes of UKS drones and EGLS.
Yes. The U.S. military realized, why not build our own cheap stuff? UKS is a low-cost, one-way interceptor. It's basically a U.S. suicide drone designed specifically to hunt other drones.
And the cost?
About $35,000. And EGLS and Vampire systems are ground-based versions of this cheap interceptor concept.
So it's just robot versus robot at that point?
Ideally, yes. The metric has changed from can we hit it to can we hit it without spending a fortune.
Yeah.
And in 2025, they proved they could maintain interception rates of 90+% using these cheaper methods. This is crucial because it completely negates Iran's quantity advantage.
That is the kinetic side, things blowing up. But there is an invisible front too, electronic warfare. The source material had a wild story about Starlink that we need to touch on.
This was a major wake-up call for the West. Starlink, as we know, is Elon Musk's satellite internet constellation. It has been a massive lifeline in conflict zones like Ukraine.
Right.
But in January 2026, during the domestic protests in Iran, the government successfully jammed it.
I thought Starlink was unjammable. Isn't that the whole sales pitch?
Yeah.
That the satellites are in space?
Nothing is unjammable if you have enough power and the right tech. It is just physics. Starlink works on radio frequencies. If you can flood those frequencies with noise like screaming in a library, no one can hear the conversation.
How do they actually do it?
Iran used very powerful ground-based jammers, and the analysis suggests these were likely Russian technology. They flooded the noise floor, but they also used GPS spoofing.
Wait, how does GPS spoofing affect Starlink? Doesn't the dish just look up?
A phased array antenna needs to know exactly where it is on the ground to point its beam at a fast-moving satellite. If you spoof the GPS signal so the dish thinks it is in, say, Antarctica, it points the wrong way.
Oh, I see.
Link lost.
This is the kill switch the sources refer to.
Yes, it shows a growing sophistication in electronic warfare, or EW. If they can blind Starlink, they can potentially blind other communications. It disrupts the ability of protesters to organize, obviously, but militarily it greatly complicates drone operations.
But the U.S. has its own tricks in the EW space.
The EA-18G Growlers, these are the electronic warfare versions of the Super Hornet. They don't carry bombs, they carry highly advanced jamming pods.
What do they do?
They create electronic shields. They can sever the control links between a drone and its human operator, so the drone just falls out of the sky or flies aimlessly until it crashes.
It is a massive game of cat and mouse in the electromagnetic spectrum.
It is, and it's not just the US and Iran playing this game, which brings us to the bigger picture. Section 5. The Crink Alliance.
Crink. It sounds like a bad breakfast cereal, but it stands for China, Russia, Iran, North Korea.
It is the Shadow Alliance. It is the axis of disruption. And in this specific context, China and Russia are the shadow players who are fundamentally changing the odds for Iran.
Let's break down their roles based on the sources. What exactly is China doing?
The analysis describes China as providing the eyes and the fists for Iran.
Okay, the
Satellite intelligence. This is absolutely critical. The U.S. Navy relies on constantly moving to stay safe. The ocean is very big, a carrier is relatively small. But China has the Beidou satellite navigation system and a massive network of synthetic aperture radar satellites.
so they can see through clouds.
Through clouds, through smoke, at night. The sources indicate China is providing real-time tracking of U.S. carriers to Tehran.
Wait, so when those F-35s are flying or the carriers moving to a new position, China is telling Iran exactly where they are.
That is the fear. That is the eyes. If you have real-time satellite intel, you can guide your ballistic missiles with much greater precision. That turns Iran's anti-ship missiles from a maybe into a probably.
And the fists.
The hardware. Advanced anti-ship missiles, and specifically the YLC-8B radar.
What is special about that radar system?
It is an anti-stealth radar. It uses UHF frequencies. It is designed specifically to detect aircraft like the F-35 and the F-22 that are supposed to be invisible to normal radar.
So the invisible planes might not actually be invisible.
That is the billion-dollar question right now. If Iran has functional anti-stealth radar from China, that complicates the U.S. Day One strategy significantly. You can't just waltz in and bomb the targets. You have to fight your way in.
And what about Russia's role?
Russia is the tech transfer hub. We already mentioned the jamming technology that took down Starlink, that is likely Russian, battle-tested in Ukraine. There is also the potential delivery of Su-35 fighter jets to Iran.
These are advanced flankers.
Very capable dogfighters.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the nuclear deal they signed in September 2025, a $25 billion reactor deal.
So Russia and China are actively propping Iran up.
Their strategic goal is clear: use Iran as a proxy. They want to drain U.S. resources. If the U.S. is tied up in a massive war in the Middle East, expending billions of dollars and irreplaceable military assets, that is a huge win for Beijing and Moscow.
Right.
They don't want a direct superpower conflict with Washington. They want the U.S. to bleed out in a regional one.
It is cold-blooded geopolitics.
It is the oldest game in the book. Let you fight my enemy while I watch.
Okay, let's get into the heavy stuff now. Section 6, scenario planning. The source material details something called the Barackface hypothesis.
Yes.
Now, I want to be incredibly clear here for everyone listening. We are pulling this next part directly from a specific war game scenario outlined in that blog analysis.
Right, this is a hypothetical.
Exactly. It is a hypothetical analysis. It is not a prediction of what will happen, and we are certainly not endorsing any political outcomes here.
Oh.
Our job is just to report what the source material is analyzing.
Correct. This is a best-case first strike scenario analysis. It's looking at what a U.S.-led operation might look like if the goal was decapitation and denial.
Walk us through phase 1, shock and awe, days 0 to 3.
The objective here would be to blind the enemy and take out the big threats immediately. It starts with a stealth opening. F-22s and F-35s go in to blind the radar, specifically those YLC-8B radars we just talked about. They launch AARGM-ER missiles to hunt the radar dishes.
Then the heavy hitters come in.
Yes. The B-2 Spirits with the MOPs. They would hit any remaining underground silos that weren't destroyed in the 2025 war. But the specific focus of this hypothesis is targeting leadership. Precision strikes on IRGC headquarters and besieged command centers.
Why targeting the leadership specifically? What does that achieve?
The theory is that the Iranian command and control structure is extremely rigid. It is top-down. If you cut off the head, the body stops moving. If you take out the commanders who order the besieged militia, the goons on motorbikes, as the source calls them, to crack down on protesters, the entire repression apparatus fails.
Which leads to phase 2, sustained degradation.
This is weeks 1 through 4. You continue to destroy command and control. You enforce a strict naval blockade to stop all oil exports, which completely chokes the economy. You basically turn the lights off for the regime.
And this leads to the political endgame discussed in the source, the Pahlavi option.
Right. This is a highly controversial but widely discussed aspect of the hypothesis in the source material. The idea is that if the IRGC collapses, there is a sudden power vacuum. This scenario suggests a transition to an interim government led by Reza Pahlavi.
The son of the former Shah.
Yes. He is a prominent figure in the diaspora. The theory in the war game is that he would act as a constitutional monarch, a unifying figure to bridge the gap, with the ultimate goal of holding democratic elections within 12 months.
That sounds very optimistic.
It is the absolute best-case scenario. It assumes the regime crumbles quickly and that the people uniformly welcome the change without infighting. But the risks are massive.
What are the risks of this approach?
Proxy activation. This is the nightmare scenario for the Pentagon. The moment the first U.S. bomb falls, the IRGC might send the burn-it-all-down order.
To whom?
Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, sleeper cells in Bahrain and Iraq.
And Hezbollah has thousands of missiles pointed at Israel right now.
Tens of thousands. And the Houthis can hit Saudi oil fields. And you have immediate missile retaliation on Gulf allies. Remember, the flight time for a missile from Iran to Dubai or Doha is measured in minutes.
Wow.
Even if the U.S. destroys 80% of their missiles on the ground, the remaining 20% can cause catastrophic damage to global energy markets and civilian populations in the Gulf.
So that is the military what if. But we are currently in a diplomatic window. Section 7, the diplomatic last stand.
We are. President Trump has issued a 10 to 15-day deadline. That clock started ticking in mid-February 2026.
So we are about halfway through the countdown right now. What are the specific demands on the table?
The sources outline 4 main pillars. First, zero enrichment. This is the big one. Iran must abandon domestic uranium enrichment entirely.
So no centrifuges spinning at all.
None. They have to import all their nuclear fuel from Russia, which is known as the Rosatom model.
Basically saying you can have nuclear power, but you absolutely cannot make the fuel yourself.
Exactly. It removes the physical capacity to build a bomb. If you don't have the centrifuges, you cannot enrich to weapons grade. Second, missile limits, capping all ballistic missile ranges at 300 kilometers.
300 kilometers, that's barely across the border.
It is the Missile Technology Control Regime, or MTCR, standard. It effectively disarms their long-range threat. It completely takes away their ability to hit Israel or Europe.
What's the third demand?
Proxy divorce, cutting all funding to Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas, turning off the money tap permanently. And fourth, human rights, releasing political detainees and ending the violent repression of domestic protests.
Those are huge demands. That is basically asking the regime to change its entire identity.
It is. It is a maximalist position. The stakes here are Iran's survival versus its sovereignty. If they agree to this, they survive, but they lose their revolutionary export capabilities. They become just another country.
If they refuse.
If they refuse, they risk a short war that could utterly destroy their military infrastructure, or a forever war that drags the entire region down with them.
And the oil impact of all this.
Strategic reserves are prepared globally. The world has been stockpiling because everyone sees this coming. The goal is to mitigate the shock if the Strait of Hormuz is closed by fighting. But let's be honest. If the strait closes, gas prices are going to skyrocket regardless of how many reserves we have.
So here we are, Saturday, February 21, 2026. Let's bring it all together for the final synthesis.
When you look at the board we've laid out, the scale is just staggering. We have the Armada, 2 carrier groups, hundreds of advanced jets. We have the Shadow Alliance of Krink, providing high-tech support and satellite data. And we have the hypersonic threat that changes the reaction times from minutes down to seconds.
And we cannot forget the human element in all of this. The internal pressure in Iran is very real. The protests, the economic hardship, the Starlink blackout.
Right.
The regime is essentially fighting on 2 fronts. Against the U.S. Armada outside and against its own people inside.
And that makes them incredibly dangerous. Desperate regimes take desperate risks. If they feel the walls closing in, they might decide that a foreign war is the only way to unite the country, or at least distract it from the domestic issues.
Here is a final provocative thought for our listeners, something the source material hinted at but didn't explicitly say. We call this a potential war. But if American F-35 are dodging Iranian missiles that are guided by Chinese satellites and jammed by Russian electronic warfare. Has the World War already started?
That is the technological entanglement we are facing. It is a proxy world war fought in a single theater. The shadows are already at war. The question is when the rest of us actually see the fire.
That is a chilling thought to leave on. We want you to watch the timeline. That 10 to 15-day diplomatic window is closing fast. Keep your eyes on the news and keep listening. We will be back with updates as this situation evolves. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Stay informed.